light language from the early days when people didn't know what it was and it was not prevalent at all. I knew that it was natural for people and it was only going to go in one direction, becoming more available and more accepted and more understood. That's what we're moving through in everything, is the things that were hidden or that didn't have awareness around them, they're having more awareness around them.
Hi, I'm Raschell Harlingten, and this is the Transformational Soul Talks. Join me as I speak to many people around the globe, and I understand how the empowerment of their story leads to the trajectory of their life. So join me.
This podcast is sponsored by...
Hi, I'm Misty Lee at Campground TBD and my favorite nonprofit, Hayden's Ray. Sometimes we need to fast from society, fast from our relationships, fast from our distractions, fast from the things that are clouding our mind from clarity that may be causing frustration or doubt. Fasting is a beautiful way to do that, and you don't have to give up food unless you want to. At Campground TBD, we offer a safe space in nature for you to come and fast from what you want to, be filled with organic nourishment, body, mind, and soul. Can't wait to see you here at campgroundtbd.com.
Hi, my name is Raschell Harlingten, and this is the Transformational Soul Talks. So as always, I like to ask a question before we begin. So my question today is, how as humans can we understand our ascension and our healing? Well, my guest today will be sharing some of her thoughts and her innate wisdom as we begin our conversation. My guest today is the author of Opening to Light Language, which was a book that was a catalyst to my own journey with light language. She is also the author of the Cosmic Conscious Ascension deck. She is an energy healer, a teacher, a channel, and with over 20 years of experience, she has been guiding individuals on the path of empowerment. So I would like to offer a wonderful warm welcome to my guest today, Jamye Price.
Hello, Raschell. So nice to see you again.
It is. So for everybody that is watching and or listening, it has been about almost 6 years, 7 years.
No way.
Yes.
Wow. I thought maybe it was 2.
No. We first had our conversation where I had, talked to you. I had talked about your book. We had a conversation about some of your modalities, the crystalline whole soul healing. You performed some of those modalities on me. And then I said, would you be bold enough and come on and share your thoughts and your wisdom on my podcast? And since then, it's just expanded a lot on the understanding of a lot of what you're teaching, which I always believe is the collective consciousness of helping so many people understand their self-love, as you talk a lot about, their self-empowerment, which I talk a lot about. The empowerment of your story leads to the trajectory of your life. So what you empower yourself with. So at the beginning of the interview, I asked the question to whoever's listening or watching, what does it mean to humanity for our ascension and healing? How do they understand it? What are your thoughts around that?
It's a big, deep question that has so many layers of answers. And yet, for me, it all kind of condenses back into one, we could call this many things, the recognition of our divinity. But that is part of the recognition of the physicality that we're experiencing blended with the subtle that we are as well. Or as my guides, Ariane, the Lyran Council of Time, talk about it, they first brought this to me as the understanding, like a metaphoric understanding of the subatomic model. that the less than 1% matter and the 99+% space of that subatomic model is the same formula that we are. We are less than 1% matter, physical, separated, identity of Jamye and Raschell, that's less than 1% of us. And then 99+% of us is subtle.
As we progress and go through our lives, there's a lot of these deep questions that are coming up because people are realizing that we're not just humans, that we're not just here, that we're experiencing this, lifetime, this experience and learning from it. And it's very deep. And like you said at the beginning of it, it's the particles, it's subatomic, as you said, and it's that can get very deep and you could go down a rabbit hole, which
Yeah.
some people are kind of like, wow, what am I exactly? But you are. And like you have said many times, we're all energy and we are affected by different things that come into our own energy. And so what do you feel personally that for the next little while, probably the next 5 years, how is that going to affect humanity with the ascension? And because we are dramatically shifting, very dramatically.
Yes. Yes. And we are in a time that so many of the old structures are crumbling. And of course, that happens in much more dramatic and traumatic ways than we would want. It happens much slower than we would want. And yet, what we see occurring on a collective scale is things that were unconscious or hidden before are becoming conscious. Light language from the early days when people didn't know what it was and it was not prevalent at all. I knew that it was natural for people and it was only going to go in one direction, becoming more available and more accepted and more understood. That's what we're moving through in everything is the things that were hidden or that didn't have awareness around them, they're having more awareness around them. The part in our own life that we focus on is, what do I need to become aware of? What do I want to shift? And that's the healing aspect of your question, where we're in a time where we are rearranging. And that's what this time frame is about. It's kind of like the caterpillar now being in the cocoon, but being in that jelly form,
Yes.
where the butterfly's not quite there yet on a collective level, but that reforming is happening. And so part of it is a deconstruction, and part of it is a trust that what is happening is going to bring more clarity of what we're going to build next. Because we see that mimicking for those of us that are on this consciousness path, we see that mimicking in what we are creating in our own lives. We're noticing more synchronicities. We're noticing more capabilities that weren't necessarily as accessible before. And so that kind of expansion is going to continue happening, even through the restructuring.
Yes. And everything you're saying, I'm thinking, as you're saying it, I'm thinking, oh, yeah, no. And there's things that I can see on different platforms where I see people becoming aware of it. And I think, oh, that's interesting. You touched on lightly with light language. It's very common knowledge now. A lot of people talk about it. And there are so many different dialects. And the communities are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's becoming, I would almost like to say household, where it's not considered, ooh, that's weird, that's woo-woo, that's too far out there. It is. And it's from my understanding, and I can only say this from, understanding it and being activated and beginning to speak it. It's a toning sense for me, at least. This is how I look at it when I have spoken it, is I can sense what I'm saying and what I'm feeling through the tones and the sounds that are coming out. It's not words for me, but it's the feeling and the emotion behind that. Um, that it's almost like I'm telepathically sending the what I want to say to the other person through those tones. So that's how I've come to understand it. What are your thoughts on that?
It comes back to your original question having so much depth to it, because that's part of what light language is.
Mm,
It's a conscious recognition of the depth of our communication, that we're and this is the beauty of light language, because I do crystalline soul healing as well, and that is a silent modality. There's no movements or sounds that go with it. And so it's a beautiful thing to experience that amazing flow of information, even in that silence. And yet, what light language offers us that's different
mm,
is it shows us how we can bring more energy, because that's all energy healing is. When I'm doing crystalline soul healing in silence, which it's almost always combined with light language, but um, that that I'm in a state of flowing more conscious knowing and allowing that through into this realm, that
mhm,
balance is possible, healing is possible, miracles are possible, whatever kind of words we want to put on that. But what light language offers us is the experience of that same thing with communication. We're at a time where we're becoming more conscious and aware of the depth of information or communication that is
mhm.
constant,
Yeah.
constant. And we're activating that more in our consciousness. And so essentially, what we get to do with light language is see or hear the externalization of vibration into this realm when they were there for a session. And so I would start making lists of the patterns that I would see and the things that were coming up. And that list making ended up being a template that is, it's an alchemical template that the higher self uses. The practitioner will initiate it, but the higher self will actually choose what's going to release and what's going to activate. But it's essentially bringing us through this vast instruction set of potential healing that is part of how we interact with life. So there's so many different layers to it. Of course, it's dealing with beliefs and trauma and the physicality very specifically, and the emotions, all of the mental ways that we're interacting. So in essence, it is a matrix or a formula of the ways that we interact. And then the template itself, the higher self chooses how to or what parts to initiate in that template. So it's kind of like if we were to run a program on our computer to like do a virus scan, it would look at the whole computer and it would say, "Oh, doesn't apply here, doesn't apply here. Oh, it applies here. Do this thing." And
Okay.
that's kind of what that modality is doing.
It's very
And it came
interesting.
yeah, it came from my Lyran guides, because they have progressed through their evolution to a point of understanding the universal laws and how we interact with them. So it has the effect of teaching us how we interact with universal law. What are some of the different things that
Okay.
we're unconscious of that we can become more conscious of?
Channeling this energy. When would that have been?
Yeah. So in November of 2012, right before the big date, um, they they came to me and they said, "We would like for you to start channeling us directly, because humanity is reaching a time frame where our information can be more helpful. Our direct information can be more helpful." And in essence, it was that turning point that 2012 was, which
Mm-hmm.
is we're just moving into a season of more opening, more consciousness, more alignment with our wholeness. I could feel that they were creating a name, which kind of surprised me because when they came to me, they said, we're the Lyran Council of Time.
Okay.
And so I thought that's what they would be known as. And I could tell they were forming a name, and all I knew was it started with an A. And I happened to talk to a friend within a couple of months, and he was like, boy, I see this group connecting with you, and it's like they're forming a connection with you to be able to channel. And I'm like, yeah, this is what's going on. And so I said to him, because he has literally gotten very specific names for me before, a
Okay.
wild story with that. But I asked him, I was like, hey, I feel like they're forming a name. Are you getting anything? And
Mhm.
he was like, no, I'm not getting anything. All I can see is the letter A. And I was like, oh, well, okay. That was the validation I needed. And they said, we are going to be known as Ariane. And they showed it to me written. And I was like, oh, well, what if people think that that's Aryan and, you have something to do with the Aryan race or something like that? And so I was just basically complaining and they were like, that's the name. And then they left. And they had showed it to me spelled out. And so it was Areon. And but
Mhm.
that's all I saw. And so they came back 2 weeks later. So they let me stew in it just a little bit. And they said, now spell the name backwards. And when I spelled it backwards, Noera, it was no era.
No.
And I was like, oh my goodness, that is definitely the name because forwards, it's AR and then eon. And the AR has a couple of meanings. One is air to
Right.
represent that very malleable energy that we need to survive, our understanding, our consciousness, and
Mhm.
awareness, which is their big thing. And also argon, which is the element that we breathe in the air. And it's the only
Oh,
element or one of the few that we breathe out and it stays the same. Like we take in oxygen, it becomes carbon dioxide, but there's other
right.
things in there too. So argon has a much longer phase with that. And so we breathe in the same argon that others have been breathing in through time. So it's kind of like
Okay.
breathing in the same air that Leonardo da Vinci breathed and that.
Right.
So it's
That
something
is very
that
cool.
is stable and
Mm-hmm.
eon for time. And it said no era with the timelessness. I was like, oh, that's the name. Like I doubted, but I did complain. So they're like, we'll show her in 2 weeks. No, I'm just kidding.
You were like in your head thinking, oh, they're gonna think this, and they're like, sit with it. That's the name.
Yes, exactly. Like we haven't thought of everything.
Right.
And so the book was there to help answer that depth of information
Mhm.
because we really needed to understand it in a deeper way. And there is a lot of depth to it. There's ways to understand, well, how is it similar to this? How is it different than this? What are some of the nuances? And so that's where that book, that impetus for that came about, was I wanted to set a foundation for us, humanity, to understand it in a deeper way. And that's where that came from. And
Mhm.
even the whole outline of the book, it's to see it through this lens and see it through that other lens. And then, of course, there's some of my story, my opening story in there. And
Mhm.
there's also exercises even for how to learn, activate your own light language because, the class is there for those that want or need to go through that process with someone. But this is something that's natural to all of us.
Lily Lee, with the first time I physically met her, instead of going, oh my gosh, it's so great to meet you. I remember this specifically. I just started spouting out light language, and tears started running down my face. And I was like, wow. And she said the feeling she got back was that it was like, it's about time we finally meet. And I thought, wow, that for me was such a profound experience. So, but like I said, the book was sort of a catalyst. It sort of opened me up to understanding where this was going to go. So what is new for you, Jamye? What is happening in 2026 and beyond? Where are things? I know you're still in Sedona, correct?
No, I have
No?
actually moved, and it's time to start taking care of my parents. And
Ah,
so I am living near my parents in South Carolina,
okay.
and it it's a rather new transition, and I've been in a lot of transition in 2025. Like it was intense. And so I'm still in that kind of catching my breath phase and rerouting into myself in a new place. And not to mention, I'm back near family, and we know that stirs up some stuff, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Not me. Mine was perfect. No. So I'm
Okay.
kidding. Um, so I'm just in this phase of s- the ups and downs of that whole process. And, some of the days are anxious days because I'm not used to this same kind of, I'm not used to this routine yet. I'm used to a very different routine.
So as we start to wrap up, I do want to ask you this. Is there anything that you'd like to share with everybody who is listening or watching as we move into this brand new year? Spring is upon us now, and so we really begin the year after the spring equinox. Is there any
Yeah.
message that you would like to share, or a message that is coming through that you'd like to share?
Yeah. Yeah. So Ariane has called this the year of understanding love. And it's easy to look around at the world and see the lack of love. And yet it's also easy to find the natural flows of love that are available to you in your life. And that's going to be juxtaposed with that lack or the call for love or the exposing of where love was lacking. And so have mercy with yourself because this is a very intense time for many. We are the sensitives that it's been a day of tears, and I knew I wasn't going to get through this without tears. Sorry,
Oh,
Raschell.
that's okay.
But we are the sensitive ones,
Yeah.
and we're in an intense time. And so when you self nurture, when possible, through that, that soothes you to be able to manage the new that we're building, because that's where this phase goes. Ariane has always said, and I know, I feel it in my being, life is fail-safed towards love. We are love at our core. And when you nurture yourself with that understanding of love within, it can't help but flow from you and flow into this world. And a lot of people need that right now.
They
So
do.
it's a
Yeah.
time of our empowerment. It's a time of being able to hold our focus when there's a lot of things that want to distract and pull focus from the core of love. And so that's what this time is to understand it within ourselves and flow that into this.